Hello, my name is Faye Anamavis. I am the founder and director of Peak, Parents of Estranged Adult Kids. Welcome. I'd like to give a special welcome to those of you who are estranged parents. I am truly glad that you are here. Give me about 7 minutes to walk through what we do in Peak and think about whether this is something that may be helpful to you. First, what do we mean by an estranged parent? Well, an estranged parent is someone who has found that they've lost the relationship with their adult child, either because that relationship has been totally cut off or that it has been severely curtailed. We know that in 95% of the cases, it is the adult child who cuts off or curtails the relationship. First thing I want you to know is that you're not alone. Estrangement is a phenomenon that's sweeping across the United States. About 26% of adults in the United States indicate that they are estranged from at least one family member. And we know that about 12% of parent-adult-child relationships are estranged as well. It's about 1 in 8. So a lot of folks are dealing with this. We think there are about 5 million estranged parents in the United States. What are the impacts of estrangement? Well, they all fall under the heading of what we call trauma. These are trauma symptoms. And you may just go through a kind of mental checklist as I'm talking about each one of these. Some of them are emotional in nature: depression, anxiety, guilt, shame, anger. These are all common reactions emotionally to parental estrangement. Some of them are behavioral in nature. We find ourselves kind of acting in ways that may not be the best for us, sometimes eating or drinking more than we should or that we did before. We may not be sleeping well. We may have tremors in our body. We may have a heightened startle response when we hear a noise. We may find ourselves jumping more than we did before. Some of the symptoms are physical and medical. Some folks have GI problems. Some people have skeletal muscular issues, particularly symptoms in their back pain. Some people have increased symptoms related to their cardiovascular system. They may have hypertension. They maybe have AFib, atrial fibrillation. Some of these are symptoms they've already had, but they have now been aggravated by the stress of trauma. Some people break out in rashes in their body for no good reason. Some people have increased headaches. These are just some of the physical, medical manifestations of trauma in people's bodies. There are relational symptoms as well. Parental estrangement tends to have collateral damage in relationships, creating stress in relationships. People feel caught in the middle, can be siblings, can be spouses, can be friends who don't really get or understand what we're going through. That could be a problem. Now, if you think you've heard this list of symptoms before, you're probably right. This is an almost identical list of symptoms that we hear for people coming back from combat zones. It's called PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, or stress symptoms. This is how severe the trauma of parental estrangement can be. And I've talked now with hundreds of estranged parents, and these are the kinds of impacts of the trauma of estrangement on their lives that I hear just about every day. Now, trauma doesn't just go away, doesn't get healed just by time. It's a kind of, as one author describes it, it's kind of a permafrost that locks in pain and these symptoms into our lives for the long term unless we do something to address them. So how do we heal trauma? There are two approaches. The first is through reconciliation, putting their energy into reconciliation with their adult child. with the hope that with that reconciliation, their trauma symptoms will go away. The problem with that is that it takes two people to reconcile. But in addition to that, we know from the research that 75% of adult children indicate that they doubt that they will ever be able to have a functional relationship with their parent again. What that means is that reconciliation is going to be delayed. And what that means is that we're going to have people living with trauma symptoms potentially for weeks or months or even years. And we don't think that the long-term sentence of these symptoms is something that is appropriate or that we should have to bear. So the other approach is what we call recovery. And in recovery, we are addressing the trauma symptoms directly. How do we help people deal with the trauma through various kinds of resources that we bring to bear in Peak? So that whether they are reconciled or not, and we hope that they are, of course, but whether they're reconciled or not, they find a way to move forward without being handicapped by all of these trauma symptoms. Now, in Peak, we have a no-fault philosophy about recovery. Sometimes people get focused on the question of, well, whose fault is the estrangement? Well, did you make mistakes as a parent? Well, of course you did. You're a human being. Does your adult child make mistakes? Well, of course they do. They're human beings. We all make mistakes. We don't believe that those mistakes should define who we are for the rest of our lives. And so we think about estranged parents the way we think about a person who is wheeled into, on a gurney, wheeled into an emergency department after a car accident. We don't step back and say, okay, before I treat this person, I want to know if it's their fault. If it's their fault, we're not going to treat them. No, in an emergency department, we believe that every accident victim deserves to recover, and we treat them. And that's how we feel about estranged parents. We know that estranged parents are not perfect, but we also believe that they deserve a healing process where they can recover from the trauma of estrangement through a variety of resources and find a good purpose and meaning for their lives going forward. So if you're ready to enter a process of recovery, why don't you get in touch with me, either the contact information that's on this website or the contact page. And remember, everyone deserves to recover.